What is going on, everyone, and welcome to the Aspect Podcast Network, the home of the Valyrian voice. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below to be the first to listen to our weekly reactions and other shows from the Aspect, including X-Men, Star Wars, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and more. I loved it. I thought it was stellar. It was really wild to be back. It feels like it's been 2 years, but it feels like it's been both 10 years and also not that long at all since season one ended. Definitely helps that I've been doing a rewatch of season one leading up to this, but had super high expectations going in. Like as we talked about in our episode zero, really loved the first season, and so was super excited to get back into this. And the first season was very much like a prologue of sorts to the whole Dance of the Dragons and everything, the real like meat of this story. And so I was excited to get into this. And this episode was very. I liked how almost like calm isn't really the right word for this episode because it's not exactly that, but there's a lot of. I should also go ahead and say now at the top, spoiler warning for the episode. If you have not watched the episode, definitely don't listen to this because we'll be talking about it at length. So yeah, just before we get into more stuff. um but yeah, I loved it. There's a huge sense of mourning and like anticipation of dread going on through the whole episode. It's a lot. It's very moody. I also think that like, I mean, it's not that the first season didn't have a big budget because it very much did, but I felt like you could really feel and see like the budget increase immediately in this show. And it also was cool getting more distance like traveled in this episode than I felt like we did in the first season. Like the first season, as we kind of talked about, was very like King's Landing and Red Keep focused, which was awesome to see like so much in that area. But with this episode, it immediately opens not there, and you get a larger scale of like the world and Westeros as a whole. And I thought that was really cool to see that kind of return because that was one of the biggest things in Game of Thrones was that it was always jumping between these different geographic locations and really like bouncing the stories around there. And so like we get a taste of that in this episode, and I thought that was really cool and great to see. But yeah, what did you think about this episode? What were your kind of like initial thoughts?
I thought it was good. I thought it was really good. I agree with a lot of your points. The just the overall vibe of the episode was like more. It was grief. It was dread, like you mentioned. It was pretty much setting up for what was what we're gonna experience this upcoming season. So many things touched upon from last season. So many parallels. I really enjoyed. Like you said, the different geographical locations, that was really good. It really felt like a Game of Thrones episode, if that makes sense. Like I love House of the Dragon itself, but this
Mm-hmm.
new direction from jumping from place to place, like pretty much having its own universe um show up in the episode, it really felt like, it was more of a Game of Thrones kind of thing, and I really enjoyed it. There was so much that I want to get into,
Mm-hmm.
and I just thought it was good. It was slow paced in a way, but at the same time, the
Yeah.
events themselves were significant.
Yeah.
I just so many things that we're gonna get into, but essentially speaking, no, this was like a really good way to start the show. A
I
really
think
good way.
I'd seen some of the like early reactions from people who had like screeners and stuff saying that
Hmm.
this really felt like the show hitting the stride that Game of Thrones achieved like in its like first season, but especially like second and third season type beat, and like getting that like sense of scope and scale and like drama and stuff. And not that the first season didn't have those things, but it's like a very it this really did feel like classic like Game of Thrones, taking you to a different world and like putting you in there and having that like, yeah, I don't know. It's a really unique feeling, and they really nailed it here. It also too, while I was watching, I was trying to um figure it out, and I'm because Game of Thrones is shot not in widescreen, like the show proper is a full screen show, but House of the Dragon for the first season was notably it was widescreen. And for this one, I think that this was also shot widescreen, but I don't know. It felt a little bit like larger than that and a little bit different. And that was something that I noticed whenever I was rewatching the first season and then also like watching some clips from Game of Thrones. Like I wish that House of the Dragon had that fuller aspect ratio because it really like the images that you're able to create with that really leave like such an impact. And I think that this one is still widescreen, but it managed to capture that feeling of being like the larger scale and the larger frame. I don't know though. I'll have to look into it later. But yeah, it's just it's fantastic stuff, and it really like sets the stage for everything that's about to just go straight to hell. It does a really good job of picking up all of the character beats and like reintroducing you to everyone and where they're at like emotionally and with their characters and like it does a really good job of that without being like over like heavy-handed in the way that the exposition is like, oh hey, by the way, audience, if you forgot this thing, like this is, whatever thing. It doesn't in a really like natural way, which I think the first season was really strong with doing that as well, especially with all of the time jumps that they were working with. um that was one of the things that I was always like most impressed by with the first season. But like this premiere continues that trend of like being able to naturally um, get the audience like integrated to the setting and where the characters are at and kind of the like headspace of everyone. There's also tons of like really subtle things throughout the episode that are setting up things to come. Um, and we'll definitely get into it at length, but there was like having read the book Fire and Blood and knowing what was probably and then what was later confirmed to come at the end of this episode, I was obviously like paying attention for things and I was like, oh man, this is gonna be like awful in the best way going later on.
Yeah.